Welcome to another episode of the LogiCast. My name is Blanka Kong. I'm joined by Esoteric Skills, Huddle Wolf, and Gunner Eos. Today's topic is going to be: Is GameFreak lazy? This is a question that a lot of people have, and a lot of people have a lot of opinions on. And I've given this particular topic a lot of thought. We kind of touched on it in our last Pokemon kind of focused episode where we were talking about Legends of Arceus and our impressions of that game. But before I get into my extensive notes, I'm gonna pass it to Mr. Esoteric. I want to hear what his thoughts are on whether or not Game Freak is lazy. Esoteric, what are you thinking, man?
Okay, so uh, I've been giving this a lot of thought as well as to whether or not Game Freak is lazy, and I don't think it's a matter of them being lazy per se. I would say that the question should be whether or not Game Freak is greedy. And here's why I say that. So I was looking at the finances of the first year um, of each game, and if you look at it, um, most of the games averaged around 10 mil for the first year, right? You had a couple of exceptions. You had like the third iterations of like the first two games, like Red and Blue, Yellow. If I'm not mistaken, actually Yellow did 14.64 million. Excuse me. I'm referring more so to Crystal, Emerald, Black and White 2, and a couple of others, and they just fall under 10 mil just for the first year, right? So, I would say that Game Freak makes a shit ton of money. Okay. Pertaining to the employees, okay, as of 2021, there are a total of 167 employees. Um, Now, just to give you guys a little backstory as to where I'm going with this, Kong and myself, we went to the same college for game design, and we had like a semester long project where we tried to create a game. Um, with just the two of us, like we had a programmer, but he was a dick. I don't know where the hell he went, but whatever. Um, he could kick rocks for all I care. But essentially, without him, we were responsible for prototyping, we were responsible for modeling, textures, paper testing, stat balancing, like et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. Um, so I'm sure you guys know where the story is going, but to conclude, we didn't get the game up and running. Um,
We didn't get the
so
game
the
up.
reason why, yeah, we didn't even get the game up. To be honest, we had a couple of models. If I'm not mistaken, I believe we had like three beers, three iteration of beers. The name of the game was Tyrants of Nature, and you can kind of say it had some similarities with a Pokemon game in terms of evolution because we had three bears which had like different ways of evolving depending upon how you get through the game. We were still testing out the prototype, finalizing that as well. Um, but we got literally nowhere. So I say this to kind of convey like if we, just the two of us, were pretty much struggling to create a game, I could only imagine the struggles with only 167 employees, modeling a total of 898 assets, animating them, balancing out moves, and play testing, et cetera, et cetera. Because there's a lot of other components that go into creating a game, especially something that's as massive as Pokemon. Um, so I'm not going to include back in the days because I feel like 167 employees would be able to um, produce a game because of the graphical um, quality back in the days, the amount of components that wasn't as much as today. Because now the graphical expectations are much higher. Um, but not only are the expectations significantly higher, Game Freak is pretty much not utilizing their budget to add additional help. And not only that, the deadlines are a lot sooner. So I was taking a look at the Pokemon games. If you look at Pokemon Red, Green, and Blue to Pokemon Yellow, that was like a 2 year gap. Then from there, you had Gold and Silver, which was, yeah, it was a year after. Um, but the earlier games, like that was on GBA, DS Lite, and so on, they took a couple of years before they were being produced. And again, based off the graphical limitations, they didn't really have to do as much modeling, as much animation, and so on and so forth. I feel like they were able to bang that out. I could be wrong. I definitely could be wrong. But nowadays, with these current Pokemon games, which I have to say, Game Freak is making more because Switch games are $20 more than what the portable systems were prior. We used to pay $40 for DS and Game Boy games and so on. If you look at the timeline, most of those games were created within an annual period. Um, so to be honest, I feel like this issue shouldn't really fall upon the developers. I feel like this issue should fall upon the suits. I mean, I couldn't find any data like to see what an average salary Game Freak employee makes, but with the amount of money that Game Freak accumulates with these Pokemon games, they definitely can pretty much add or hire 167 more employees to make a more cohesive game. So that's my take. I feel like it's not about the developers being lazy per se. I think it's more so Game Freak is being greedy and they're working with that less is more notion.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
that's kind of my perspective on it. What are your thoughts on it, Com?
All right. So I've compiled a lot of data myself. Um, so first things first. We need to define what is lazy. So lazy is unwilling to work or use energy, which I don't think is necessarily accurate to Game Freak or any game developer. It takes a lot of work to make these products, right? Despite what people may think, it takes an incredible amount of work. And the Pokemon games, while they're not polished to the degree that they should be, they're still, I think, good games. Um, Now, other people have used the term care, right? They don't care. Um, and I don't think that's accurate either. I'm pretty sure they care whether Pokemon succeeds or not, right? Because that's if the game doesn't succeed, it affects their pockets, which is a problem. So I don't think that's uh, the right word to use. I think you hit it on the head. It's greed, which is defined as an intense or selfish desire for something, especially wealth, power, or food. It's greed, right? And you brought up sales stats. I got sales stats. So Pokemon overall is worth 109 billion, probably more now, right? And if we compare that to some of the other big um, franchises out there, let's see here. Super Mario Brothers, which has been around for 10 years longer than Pokemon, is only worth 30.25 billion, a third of what they're worth. Not even a
Yeah,
third,
I
less than a
believe
third.
from what I researched as well, I believe they came right behind Super Mario franchise. Like they were like Mario was number one, and I believe Pokemon was number two.
Mario's number one for units sold. Pokemon is definitely number one for gross earnings.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So Super Mario has units sold of 387 million, while Pokemon has 386 million. Let's be real; they're gonna surpass Mario in the next game or two, right? Pretty sure. Pokemon is on its way to being number one. Um, Let me see here. Let me just. I got a lot of notes here, so excuse me for a minute. So I mentioned this briefly last time, but I didn't have the exact numbers. And if there's breakdowns online, anybody could find this information. So Pokemon's worth 109 billion. Licensed merchandise is 82 billion. Video games is 24 billion. TCG is 10 billion. Box office is 1.85 billion. Manga sales is 1.46 billion. Home entertainment 148 million. Strategy guides 142 million, which is crazy. And jet aircraft sales 3 million, which is, I didn't know this. In Japan, they have Pokemon themed jet crafts, which is like it's plastered with Pokemon on the front, and then inside it's like a Pokemon paradise with a bunch of memorabilia and video games and stuff. Apparently, that's its own thing, and people pay a lot of money to fly on those jets. And just having that service, they've made $3 million, which is like a drop in the bucket for their overall gross earnings, which is insane. If we look at, you brought up some of the sales stats for Pokemon, right? Pokemon Red and Blue and Green, 31.38 million units sold. Gold and Silver, 23 million. Pokemon Yellow, 14 million. Sword and Shield, 23.9 million, which is gigantic, right? That it beat fucking Gold and Silver, which is insane to me because Sword and Shield gets a lot of flack, but
I would say because it was on a next gen console and Pokemon Let's Go wasn't that great. Like nobody was really feeling it. That's my only reason.
you say that, right? But Pokemon Let's Go it sold 14 million units.
14. Yeah.
So again, the numbers don't lie. And so I was like, damn. So I need more perspective. Like what let's compare like Pokemon of that time period to another game of that same time period. So I started looking at some of the dates. So Pokemon Red and Blue, at least in North America, and I think the rest of the world, besides Japan, came out in 1998. They sold 31 million units, right? Which is huge, right? What are some of the other like hot, like when you think 1998, what are some of like the cutting edge games, right? Oh, let me look it up. Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. How many Pokemon made 31 million. How many units do you think Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, which is still regarded today as the best Zelda game by many people, how many units do you think that game sold? Any takers?
Probably didn't
5 million?
probably didn't even hit double digits. I would
So
say maybe
5?
8 to 9 mil.
5, yeah, 5.
9 mil. Wolf, you're the
About half.
half, so 15 million.
Mm-hmm.
7.6 million.
Oh wow.
So less than a third. I'll quickly just spitball these. Tekken 3, which is one of the highest grossing fighting games of all time, 8.3 million. Metal Gear Solid, one of the best action games ever, 7 million. Resident Evil 2, regarded as the best Resident Evil game across, maybe with the exception of 4, 5.7 million, 1998. Right? When you look at those games and then you think of what Pokemon is, in terms of like what you're getting as far as entertainment value and like graphics and everything, there's a big gap, right? And the fact that Pokemon blew them out of the water that hard is pretty incredible. Now, some people might think, well, that's the first Pokemon game. It was like a cultural phenomenon. Fair enough. So let's move on to the year 2000, which is when we got Gold and Silver.
Well, before you do that, Kong, I have a question.
Go for it.
Could that also be predicated upon the fact that those games that you mentioned were on next gen consoles, so they could have been expensive as opposed to like the Game Boy, which was significantly cheaper than the 64 and the
sure. That's absolutely a factor. But the numbers are here, and I mean, PS1 games sold for $40 retail back in the day. So did Game Boy games.
That is true.
So
that is true.
While the main unit is cheaper, right, and more accessible, I mean, that's pretty substantial. When you look at PS1 units sold versus Game Boy units sold, I mean, I don't know, like the number discrepancy isn't that big. But
that's
moving
true.
on. The year 2000, we have Pokemon Gold and Silver. Final Fantasy IX came out that same year, 5.5 million. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, 3.1 million. Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which is considered to be like one of the best fighting games ever, right? I couldn't even find a specific metric for the year 2000 for Marvel vs. Capcom 2. So I looked up I went to Capcom's corporate investor relations page, which is an official thing, right? They have like all their franchises and how many units they've sold and how much money they've sold and or how much money they've made with each franchise. Marvel vs. Capcom as an entire franchise, every single iteration of Marvel vs. Capcom, all of them, overall, over 16 titles have sold 10 million. That's a third of just Pokemon Red and Blue.
Holy shit.
Okay, just to give you perspective, that's insane. Marvel vs. Capcom has been around since the early 90s. Okay, and this is from Marvel vs. Capcom 1, all the remakes and relaunches, all the way to Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. That's insane. Moving on. Year 2002, Grand Theft Auto Vice City, 10.25 million. Compared to what came out in 2002, it was Ruby and Sapphire. Ruby and Sapphire sold 16 million units. So Grand Theft Auto Vice City, 10.25 million. Final Fantasy X, 8.5 million. Super Smash Bros. Melee, which is still a huge game today, 7.41 million. 2006 was the year we got fourth generation of Pokemon, which was what's it called? Diamond and Pearl. 2006, yeah. Mario Kart Wii. Beat it. Mind you, Mario Kart Wii was bundled with Wiis at the time. 37 million. Ruby and Sapphire sold 16 million. Gears of War on Xbox, 5 million. Elder Scrolls Oblivion, 1.8 million. Elder Scrolls Oblivion, that's a big game. Very sophisticated compared to even Pokemon Arceus, which came out just now, right? Moving on, I got 4 more to go. 2010, we got Pokemon Black and White. That's the same year that Call of Duty Black Ops came out, right? Call of Duty Black Ops 1 and 2 are considered to be the best Call of Duty games ever, right? Maybe right behind Modern Warfare. It depends on who you ask, right? Pokemon Black and White, 15.64 million units sold. Call of Duty Black Ops 1, 14.55 million. That's crazy. To me, that blows my mind. I don't know. Mario Galaxy 2, 12.8 million. Gran Turismo 5, 11.95 million. I tried to find the most successful games of those years. That's why I'm naming. This is such a different. These games are all very different, but these are like the best selling games of those years. 2013 was a big year. That was the year that we got Pokemon X and Y. Pokemon X and Y sold 16.49 million. Now that's important because this is the first game that jumped from 2D sprites to 3D
sprites.
Right?
That's the first 3D game.
Yeah. 16.49 million. Very, very healthy number. Right? They outsold Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, which was another big jump from Game Boy to Game Boy Advance. But that's when Pokemon was kind of going on a downtrend a little bit, getting off the high of Generation 1 and 2. So anyway, 2013, we got Pokemon X and Y. Cool. What else came out in 2013? Grand Theft Auto 5. This is only on the PS3. 29.52 million copies sold. So Grand Theft Auto blew Pokemon out of the water. Right? Go figure. Call of Duty Ghosts on the Xbox 360. 10.16 million. Killzone Shadowfall. Only 2.1 million on PS4. Moving on to 2016. 2016, we got Pokemon Sun and Moon. I hate Pokemon Sun and Moon, just for the record. It's the worst Pokemon game ever. Pokemon Sun and Moon sold 16.2 million, right? 2016, we also got Uncharted, which was 16 million, even. Uncharted lost to Pokemon Sun and Moon. How? I don't know.
They were living off of the Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire hype, because that came subsequent to X and Y. Which was like 15 million.
Yeah, but if we talk about Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, that was 14 million, and that came out in 2014. That was a 2-year difference. So yeah, Uncharted 4, 60 million. Mario Kart 8, 8.46 million. The Witcher 3, which won Game of the Year, 10.8 million.
Wow.
Crazy, right? Now, think about all these games I mentioned. I'm kind of spitfiring these games, but like Uncharted 4, Mario Kart 8, The Witcher 3, Pokemon X and Y. Like, there's a big fucking difference in quality of these games. Yet, Pokemon is just raking it in, right? 2019, this is the last, set of games. 2019 is when we got Pokemon Sword and Shield, which was a step maybe in the right direction. I wouldn't even call it a step. It's like a nudge in the right direction, right? A look, a glance in the right direction.
Yeah.
That game sold 23.9 million, right? So 24 million pretty much. God of War, the best-selling PS4 game ever, 19.5 million. Red Dead Redemption 2, one of the, I mean, people were sucking dick on the streets for this fucking game. This is so much damn hype around this game. As of today, 39 to 43 million, right? Fair enough. There's a discrepancy with that number. Animal Crossing, 37.62 million. The new Animal Crossing on Switch, which makes sense, right? But that's another game. Like, think of Animal Crossing. Like, there's nothing wrong with Animal Crossing, but like, look at Animal Crossing and you look at like God of War or Red Dead Redemption 2. It's like, what the fuck? Like, you know, the budgets and like the development process there was a big difference between these two types of games. So, saying all that, after gathering all these numbers, I was kind of disgusted with Pokemon. I haven't played Legends of Arceus in 2 weeks. After gathering all this information, I couldn't look at the game. Honestly, I was pretty disgusted. I'm like, you guys are making all this money. This is like whatever is beyond greed. I don't even have the word adverse. I don't know. Like,
gluttonous.
Gluttonous. Like, it's gross how much money they have made and continue to make, yet give us this like low tier product. It's crazy to me. So I'm not saying that I'm not going to ever buy a Pokemon game ever again, because these games are unique in that they don't lose value over time. They only gain value over time. So it would only hurt me in the long run if I don't, because I still like Pokemon, but I don't see myself engaging in the franchise too much anymore. After kind of compiling all this data and kind of comparing it, I'm like, this is crazy to me. So it's they're not lazy, they're fucking unbelievably greedy. And among doing, and I'm almost done, guys. You guys can chime in afterward.
I'm listening.
I saw this quote somewhere in some YouTube video, and Pokemon is very nostalgic to me, and it's very important to my upbringing and everything. But it is mostly nostalgia, if I'm being honest. And there's a quote that I saw that really resonated with me as I was doing this research. And the quote it's from this guy, this Indian guru, spiritualist person, Deepak Chopra. I know I'm butchering his name, but I'm American, so sue me.
I heard, yeah.
He says, I use memories, but I will not allow memories to use me. And so that quote resonated with me as far as Pokemon's concerned, because while I can be very nostalgic for my childhood, they're clearly using that nostalgia in the grossest way possible. And I don't think I can contribute to that anymore. It's been 25 years almost of me consuming Pokemon products at full price day one, and I don't think I'm going to do that anymore. Although I have skipped on certain Pokemon games. I skipped on not Black and White, Ultra Sun and Moon, because I hated Sun and Moon, and I did skip out on Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. But those are the only 2 times that I skipped on getting a Pokemon game during launch period. So, yeah, I don't think they're lazy. I think they're fucking unbelievably greedy. And I hope that the developers and the artists that are behind the game are getting paid handsomely, because they should be, with all the money that they're raking in. But they're probably not. And I couldn't find salary information on that. So, otherwise I would have included it.
I was looking at some stuff. It was called Nintendo Soup. That was the only thing that I saw pertaining to like people who worked at GameFreak. They said an entry-level person, according to them, I'm not sure if this is accurate or definitive, they make about 220,000 yen, if I'm not mistaken, and that only equates up to like 1,900 a week. Or I'm sorry, a month, excuse me. So they're not really making much according to that. Again, I don't know if that's
a very average
accurate.
salary to be working for like the biggest IP in the world right now. It's more valuable than Marvel, Disney, Star Wars, everything. Like Pokemon is SSS tier in terms of value. Anyway, I have more notes to go through, but I don't want to eat up too much. I ate up like 15, 20 minutes here. So apologies for the ramble, but
No, it's
yeah.
very interesting to hear.
Gunner or Wolf? Who wants to go next? What do you guys think? Is Game Freak lazy?
I guess I'll go because I'm gonna have the least to say about this because I hopped off that Pokemon ship around not red and blue, around Ruby Sapphire, as in Game Boy Advanced Ruby Sapphire, because I think that's when I realized that just Pokemon's not for me. Tried X and Y because I was like, there's been some time. We're on the 3DS now. Maybe the game's different. Wasn't. I didn't even beat X and Y. Um, then just left all the Pokemon games alone. Tried Arceus, liked it for the most part, but you know, I I started playing Xenoblade Chronicles again after I beat the game. So that says everything that needs to be said on its longevity with me personally. But yeah, I don't think Game Freak is lazy. It lazy as in trying to do the bare minimum. Actually, no, I correct my statement. They do the bare minimum because, as Kong and Esoteric pointed out, with how much like dollary dues these guys are raking in, they don't need to do anything vast. Like anything I can complain about, story, graphics, um, Pokemon models, new Pokemon, old Pokemon, Mega Evolutions, Gigamax, all that fancy stuff they added. Like it doesn't matter really in the grand scheme of things because they can just kind of put whatever the fuck they want to put, and it boggles my mind to see like because I would keep up on Pokemon via news about it. I wouldn't buy the games, but I was like, what's going on with Pokemon? What's going on with at the time the first game on the Switch, which would have been Sword and Shield. I was like, what's going on with that? It's the first Pokemon on the Switch, brand new console at the time. What's going on with that? I started reading that they axed a bunch of Pokemon. Um, the decks got rearranged, and then I read that Game Freak discovered DLC, so that you know new regions would have been added in DLC along with Pokemon and all the controversy with that. I read about the controversy of Game Freaks justifying the omission of Pokemon because they were supposedly building the Pokemon models from the ground up, getting them out of the 3DS era and you know recreating their models on the Switch, and then people proved that that was wrong, that they were still using the same models from the 3DS, just up-res them. So I was just reading all this stuff. And then when you come and bring out sales numbers for that game, it's like it none of it matters. Like it just doesn't matter. They could have just literally ported in the JPEG and put it on a 3D background, and it probably still would have sold like gangbusters. I'm
Here's
not. They could have
yeah.
called it an artistic choice, and people would have been like, "Oh man, this is fucking stupid. Pokemon's dead. I'm gonna pre-order the special pack that comes with 2 games, 2 of them, please. How much? Cool. I'm gonna pay it right now." Like it would still sell. It doesn't matter. So again, I don't. To wrap it up, because I don't really have much. Being as a guy who tried Pokemon and just got reminded that this ain't for you. Play something else. And I'm like, okay, I got it. Thank loud and clear. Um, Game Freak's not lazy. You can make an argument that they are lazy with the design and whatever special features they implement or remove in any particular Pokemon game and the remakes that they pump out. But they're not lazy. Like Kong said, they just want that money, and they get it. They will continue to get it, and I don't see Pokemon ever really dying, quote unquote, or it will definitely dissipate, and I don't think it'll. I can't even say it might not be a juggernaut anymore, but Pokemon will always be around. Pokemon will always have its dedicated fans, that are in for the long haul, the good, the bad, and the ugly of Pokemon. They'll be there for that, and that's fine. If they enjoy it, they love their game. You know what? Do you have fun? I'm not gonna rain on your parade. I'm just going somewhere else. But yeah, to wrap it up, they're not lazy. They just want that money, and they don't have to they don't have to innovate anymore.
Nope.
They're on the yacht. They don't have to do something new. They could. They don't have to.
That Jeff Bezos yacht.
Dude, fucking, I don't know, fucking, they rival his fucking yacht money. But yeah. So it feels like it's not my fight to fight. I have no dog in this particular fight. I So I just look at it from afar, read the news about it, and just go, huh, that's a thing. So that's my that's my take. It's very weak, but it's just not a franchise that's for me, and I've realized that, and it is what it is. So I'll just pass it over to Mr. Wolf.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, right?
hmm. It's whether the question of Game Freak is if consider Game Freak lazy
That's the
or
t-
not.
that's the title of the episode. You
Right.
take that for what
So
it's worth.
I don't. So initially, when we decided that this is going to be the title for the episode, in the last podcast when we focused on Legends of Arceus, I was very critical in a sense of saying they are lazy, flat. Doing the research, you realize that I still don't say that I'm still not going to say that they're not lazy, but I am going to say more along of what Gunnar said, in where they are getting they are getting passing grades for doing little to no work. And I don't consider that lazy because there is many different things that goes into developing a video game. There's many different um, entities that affects how a video game is developed, whether how long it takes, how many people is going to be used on the team, the direction of the video game goes. I mean, come on. An old game called Fuse, the four of us played Fuse. We played Fuse, and it was very different from what Insomniac had initially planned for it. But because of other influences, Fuse ended up being a very different game
Mm,
um,
yeah.
than what it initially was. And probably the original version of Fuse would have probably launched that title into greatness. Who knows, right? We will never know. But that's an example of where I can say, well, did Insomniac get lazy and just modeled, their characters off of these super cool brutes that, everybody would expect a third person shooter, co-op shooter to have? I wouldn't say they were lazy. They had restraints, I'm gonna say, and they had to go by it from what it sounded like in that game's situation. So I could say that Game Freak is going through, has gone through the same thing, where there are restraints, they are influences, and they are also, other things that come into play, variables that come into play that can influence whether a video game company looks lazy come to the consumer eye. Um, So I'm honestly not even sure if Game Freak is lazy, or I'm not even sure if Game Freak is just doing what they can do. What I am sure of is like when me and Kong was going to high school, we did the bare minimum to get that 65 passing mark. And the moment we got that 65 passing mark, fuck this class, we're moving on to the next. That's
Yep.
how our logic was. And this is what it seems like based on my research. This is what it seemed like Game Freak is doing. They know that there are certain things that works, so they're gonna give you that, and then they're gonna move on to the next. And Game Freak has other video games. No one cares about them. Let's be real. When I looked at the other video games that Game Freak has, is like,
What's it called? Little Town Hero. That game looks
yeah,
alright.
Little Town Hero, I think, is the most notable one out of all of the lists that they have. is
Yeah.
Little Town Hero. And they put out a statement recently. I think it was recently they put out the statement saying that the Pokemon franchise is no longer their focal concern. But when you look at their list, what other fucking concern do you have? It's like,
I-
it's like it's the same shit as like, oh, Square Enix can say Final Fantasy isn't our focal concern. Square Enix can say that because Square Enix has other franchises that are just as strong, that is just as notable, that is just as recognizable as Final Fantasy. They can say that. Game Freak can't say that because if I go to my little boy and I say, "Hey, what's a Pokemon?" he can explain that to me. If I go to him and say, "Well, what's Little Town Hero?" he's gonna be like, "Dad, I don't know what the fuck you talking about. What is that?" If I go to my sister, I can say, "Hey, what's a Pokemon?" She'll be able to tell me. If I go to her and say, "What's a Little Town Hero?" she's gonna be like, "Wolf, what the fuck is that?" Like you don't have another title. Like you're in the end of the day, you can say your focal point is no longer the Pokemon franchise, but let's be real. The Pokemon franchise is your backbone.
Oh yeah.
It's your fucking
Yeah,
backbone.
there's no
Period.
question about that.
Right.
It's their entire skeletal structure. Like
It's so
every
first and foremost, when I read that, it kind of upset me because it's like I don't want Game Freak to be a company that only focuses on the Pokemon games alone. But if that is your backbone, we take care of your spine, right? You don't do anything that's dangerous that's going to damage your spine. So why would you not take care of the Pokemon franchise if that's the franchise that's really keeping your company up? According to okay, so I didn't do any financial research because I knew Kong would because he's a numbers man. So I already knew he was gonna do all of it. So
I wouldn't say a
I
numbers
already knew.
man, but
You are a numbers man. You
Mr.
are.
Statistician.
Right. You are. And that's okay. But I was able to say, okay, well, he's gonna do that research for me and he's gonna bring it to the table. So I don't need to do all of that.
So you're basically doing what Game Freak is doing.
is Wolf lazy? New topic. I'm
Um,
kidding.
But what I'm saying is that I can like we all can get upset that Game Freak makes 24 million from Sword and Shield, 16 million from, Ruby Sapphire or whatever version they did. We can get upset at that, but it doesn't I can all right, so it is a lot of money. But we have to realize what I've recently found out is that Game Freak splits its shares.
Of
So
course.
Nintendo gets some, the Pokemon company gets some. I
Hmm.
didn't even know the Pokemon company was a business entity to begin with.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that,
and
right?
No.
I
wasn't it
just
some
thought
other
it was
company, like Creature or
well,
something like that?
Creature is like anything else that will help them. Niantic, what's this new one that helped them with BDSP's remake? So
Okay.
they'll split their growth their gains from these games. So it's not like Game Freak is getting the full blast of those millions of dollars that is coming in. I'm pretty sure they're
You
getting a
said
good
billions wrong.
amount of it. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, billions of dollars. They're not getting all of it. They're getting. I'm pretty sure they're getting maybe more, but they're not getting all of it. And I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo is taking more um, than everybody else. So I understand that part. The thing with Game Freak is that I did a lot of research on Sword and Shield, mostly because there's not much information with Legends of Arceus, that much information anyway. And um, it's old information, so anybody listening, 2, 3 years old, they can look this up all themselves. So the guy said, what's his name? Shigeru Omori. Yeah, I'm calling names now. He says we are changed. We are we they that they wanted to put Sword and Shield on the Switch because they wanted to make they wanted to make the Pokemon more expressive and more colorful than they could have done on the video game consoles. the handheld consoles. But when you look at it, any of you who own Sword and Shield right now can load it up, go into a battle with a Pokemon. It just stands there. So, what is an expression? What do they consider expressive? Because if you load up Pokemon, was it Coliseum? Not Pokemon Coliseum. Was it Battle? The
Stadium.
one on no, the one on the
Battle
Wii.
Coliseum or
Battle Coliseum.
Battle Revolution. Sorry.
Battle Revolution. There we go. If you load up Pokemon Battle Revolution, that's expression. If you watch those Pokemon as they stand there idly, every Pokemon expresses some part of their personality in some way. Like Machoke as a fighting type Pokemon, he'll slap his face to make sure to make sure like he stays in the game. You know, Machoke doesn't do that in fucking Sword and Shield animation. So I don't know where they're getting the whole expression or expressive Pokemon from. I don't know where that marketing was going. It doesn't make sense to me. Pokemon takes damage in, again, let's compare it to Battle Revolution, because I feel like when it comes to animation, Battle Revolution was the best Pokemon game in that department. So when a Pokemon took hit, if it was a super effective hit, they would fly pretty much to the edge of the arena to express how heavy that hit was to them. If it wasn't much of a hit, they'll slightly flinch if they resisted the move or not. Those are things that you are showing the player or the viewer on the scale of how this Pokemon is reacting to what situation the sprite was put in place. But if Machoke gets hit with a psychic attack in Sword and Shield, his body pops up, he turns a little red, a little sound effect happens, and he loses HP. And that's whether he gets hit with a move that he resists or a move that is super effective. It doesn't, like, again, it's like statues until it's their turn to attack. That's how the Pokemon sprites are now. So I don't understand where Game Freak was saying, oh, well, we're cutting back because we want to make these Pokemon more expressive. Where the fuck is the expression? Because last I checked Webster's Dictionary, that's not expression. I mean, the Pokemon's facial expression doesn't even change for the most part. So it's like, again, they're statues until it's their turn to attack. Now that we're talking about attack, let's go to the attack animations, which Game Freak was called out on for saying they wanted to focus on making attack animations better. Double kick has been the same animation since X and Y.
Hop, hop.
The same exact animation.
Giant
Tail
foot.
whip, right. Tail whip, the same exact animation. The Pokemon turns around, turns his body 90 degrees to the left, 90 degrees to the right, 90 degrees to the left, 90 degrees to the right, and then turns back around. Boom, you lost defense. It's just like, this is on the Switch at this point. I can understand X and Y coming in because it's the first 3D game. So, of course, you want to play it safe. But now you're on the Switch. Now you're on a console that was able to hold Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So, you're going to give me double kick where Pikachu pops up twice, a red foot animation hits the Pokemon, and you call that double kick. The same animation for Blaziken, the same animation for Infernape, the same animation for any other Pokemon that can use double kick. It's all the same animation. In X and Y, what's it called? The Dynamax, Gigantamax, Charizard's flamethrower is not even near his mouth. So because the way Gigantamax Charizard is animated, when he bends his head down, the fire doesn't align, the attack doesn't align with his mouth. It's like it's coming out of his forehead. So I guess
Wow.
Charizard does flamethrower with his forehead and not his lungs, or it doesn't come out of his mouth. It's real. Sorry for the lack of a better word, but it's real half-assed. It's truly half-assed. Um, then they removed particular moves, such as a competitive person, hidden power being taken away from Pokemon was a big hit overall. You took away a move that a lot of Pokemon really needed to be viable. So those Pokemon that didn't need it, such as Scizor or Blaziken, that was powerful already, remain powerful. But Pokemon that could stand a chance because they have because they're a fire type that can use hidden power ice or hidden power water or hidden power grass, they don't have that viability anymore. And I felt that was a big hit too. Taking away toxic from a vast majority of Pokemon being used and narrowing it down to only poison Pokemon was another like hit where it's like, okay, so all we're really doing here is cutbacks, constant cutbacks, but you're not giving anything new. What? You make the Pokemon bigger? Big fucking whoop-de-doo. It like all it did was just say, okay, for 3 turns, you're going to dominate, and it really doesn't matter what the opponent have. You're gonna sweep them because that's what Dynamax or Gigantamax really does, and that's why, to me personally, it's a dumbass system. It just doesn't work for me. Period. So anyhow, um, much like Gunnar said, fans was debunked. Fans did debunk the fact that they said that they were creating each Pokemon for Sword and Shield from scratch, which they obviously that was not true. They took models, and from what I saw on the Twitter thing, it was like a model of a Bulbasaur in Sword and Shield and a Bulbasaur in Sun and Moon, I think, or was it X and Y? And they compared the the models, and it was an exact match.
Yeah, that's I
So
saw
it
something
was right.
similar.
It was literally copy paste. So they weren't creating any Pokemon from scratch. Maybe they took it from X and Y and had to polish it to fit Sword and Shield's, levels of graphics or art style. I'm pretty sure they had to do that, but it definitely wasn't a build-up of the of a new model of whatever said Pokemon. Um, Sword and Shield came out with no endgame content. The battle tower did not have double battle. It didn't have triple battle. It didn't have super singles. It didn't have super double battle. All it had was literally you go in, you fight 7 people, you get BP. You go in, you fight 7 people, you get BP, and that was it. There were no battle tower bosses to make it interesting. The Pokemon was on a very small rotation. Um, and it just was like, this is what you're going to give me on release. Then almost a year later, you then give me the rest of Sword and Shield on initial release of $40 each. So not only did I spend $65 in the US anyways for Sword and Shield, I had to now spend an additional $80 to get more of the game. I will never let that down. Period. Because that year that they could have taken should have been um, those 2 DLC portions of Sword and Shield for endgame content. So no, that's not a buy. Then I looked at the size of the company, much like what Esoteric did, and the guy Junichi Masuda claimed he prefers small teams because it's easier to deal with less people. He prefers to not deal with the challenge of key communication being missed because the team is so large. So I get his point in that. As a person who was once a manager, my team, when it was small, it was easier to deal with because there were less people, less opinions, less brain thoughts, less individuality, whatever you want to call it, that I had to deal with. So the less chefs in the kitchen, some people will look at it as the more effective the food will cook. But the way my thing with that is that when you take away, when you keep your team small on such a scale of this kind of expectation, and you keep your team small, what you're doing is putting more work on one individual. Because now that individual has to now focus on, say, animation along with programming, for example. That's just me pulling stretcher, just stretching shit. But really, all it is that you're putting more pressure on the small amount of people that you have, because they have to get other jobs done when they simply could have just gotten more people to specialize in that one field. So if I specialize in animation, why am I in the game? Why am I in the creature design department? Why am I designing Bulbasaur? I should only be animating Bulbasaur. That's what my research should be. That's what my time should be going to. My time should be going to, okay, well, this Pokemon is a quadriplegic animal. How do animals that walk on four legs, how do they work within nature? How does a frog-like Pokemon react? How do frogs react to its environment? You know, like, compare it to something. That's what the animating team should have been focused on. But because you have less people, the animation team probably had to also deal with the creation of the Pokemon or the design of the Pokemon. You're putting more work on people. You have a small team. That's stress. People become stressed. So to me, that whole small team idea, because it's easier for key communication, if that's what you're worried about, you have your department of these people who specialize in this, appoint a manager to those people. Then, when it's time to report, that manager reports to you, and you hold that manager accountable for why these people didn't get such project done in such time, yada, 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 yada. That makes the most sense to me, if that's what you really want. Square Enix has over 5,000 employees. And I'm not saying that 5,000 employees work on Final Fantasy 15, but I'm pretty sure it was more than 167.
Yeah.
In the interview with Shigeru Omori, he says over 1,000 people was involved with Sword and Shield's um, inclusion, or was involved with Sword and Shield's make, including marketing, public relations. However, he does admit that on the core design and development of the game was around 200 people, which again didn't make any sense. So I compared that to Breath of the Wild, because a lot of people, for whatever reason, like to compare the Pokemon games, the current Pokemon games, with Breath of the Wild. So I did the comparison myself. Breath of the Wild had over 300 developers on it. That's almost twice as much as what Pokemon had. Not to mention, Gunner, Breath of the Wild development recruited people who worked on Xenoblade 1 and 2
Huh.
to further develop the game.
Hmm.
So Monolith Soft, who is responsible for Xenoblade 2, which is probably the most successful, one of the most popular RPGs on the Nintendo Switch,
Yeah.
to today's date, still came in and had an influence in the development of Breath of the Wild.
Huh.
And Breath of the Wild was the chance Zelda game to see how people would react to this new style of Zelda.
Right.
Game Freak had the formula. They had the formula, because Pokemon's gameplay didn't really need to change. That's not really what people are bitching about. They're not complaining on Game Freak's on Pokemon's core formula, which is you have typings that match typings. Some are strong, some are weak. You have the Pokemon with their individual stats. This is how you train them. This is their egg moves. This is their build. No one has an issue with that. Everyone has an issue with how the game is managed, and the fact, okay, so there are some who I feel is kind of pushing it, where you want all 800 Pokemon in one game. I honestly feel like that that's, I won't say unrealistic, but I can let go not having all 800 Pokemon in one game. I can let it go. That's a lot, especially if we want expressive Pokemon.
Yeah.
If we want Double Kick to look like Double Kick, why would I expect them? So they have 800 Pokemon, about 400 of them can learn Double Kick, and they have to animate each one specifically using Double Kick. That that that's going to take a while. When you have a director of your with the director of your company saying, well, he prefers to work with small amount of people. That's a lot to put on them. So
Yeah.
I don't expect a Pokemon game to have all 800 plus Pokemon. I really don't. And I'm okay with that. I can admit that. I'm okay with it. Sword and Shield took under 2 years to make. An average video game takes 3 to 4 years. Sword and Shield took under 2 years. Using recycled animation, recycled models, and recycled attacks. Ridiculous. Breath of the Wild took 4 years with additional help.
Yeah.
4 years. Breath of the Wild maxed out the average amount of time that it takes a video game to make from a game developer. Another one, too, is Monster Hunter Rise. Monster Hunter Rise took 4 years to develop. Monster Hunter Rise was in development, or they started Monster Hunter Rise. I would say conception when Monster Hunter World was released on the PS3. Now, do I think Monster Hunter Rise is a strong Monster Hunter game for the franchise? No, I don't. But I do think Monster Hunter Rise is a very powerful game for what it is on the Switch. I personally feel that way. Maybe others have different opinions on it, but I feel like Monster Hunter Rise really does utilize the Switch's capabilities. Can it do more? Of course it can. But I don't feel like they were cutting corners to develop Monster Hunter Rise.
No, the game didn't feel cheap. At least to me, it didn't feel cheap. It didn't play
Yeah.
cheap.
It just
You
lacked
know,
content.
it
That's
just like the
pretty much what it was.
content, but again, we're used to Monster Hunter a certain way, whether and I won't say gameplay wise, but we're used to Monster Hunter a certain way when it comes to how it deals with the it coming out for us to play, right? Like we
Yeah.
knew that Monster Hunter Rise coming out, there was going to be an expansion set. We knew that. But
Yeah.
again, us being the analytical individuals we are, and how heavy set we are on certain franchises, we blew through that content. There are some people right now in Monster Hunter that was playing Monster Hunter Rise that still has things to do in it. I don't know how, and I don't
Yeah,
know why, but they still have things to do in it.
I don't doubt it.
We blew Monster Hunter Rise out of the water. We did everything in what, 3 weeks? You know, so that game died for us in our little group. We're special individuals with that. But it took 4 years of development. Super Smash Brothers took 3 years in development. Ultimate, the last one to come out, took 3 years in development. And Super Smash Brothers is more akin to what Pokemon is like because they had assets they could have used already. It's not
Yeah.
like they went ahead and redesigned Zero Suit Samus from the ground. They not gonna lie to me and say that. I know they used the previous Smash Brothers sprites, and all they did was flesh them out to fit the current Smash Brothers. Of course, you had to change certain things to match, how powerful you want the characters to be or whatever. But in the end of the day, you clearly see that it's the same, that it's similar assets that are being used, that's being transitioned from one game to the next. But yet, then the company who did it still push Super Smash Brothers to that average amount of time that they need for a video game to be coherently developed. So my point of view is with that, it takes time to develop great games. And when you have Pokemon that's held on the pedestal that it's held at, you you don't put out that information and say, oh well, we developed Pokemon in 2 years, in less than 2 years. I think it was 1 year and 8 months exact, or some shit like that. You don't, like, when you say that, is like, as a consumer who doesn't understand what's going on in the background, and like I tell my coworkers, customers don't care about what's going on in the background. I've watched plenty of YouTubers who bashed the current Pokemon games or bashed Game Freak for how they're handling the current Pokemon games. And not one of them have tried to sympathize with the fact that the developers have other people to answer to. Not one of them. And these are credited YouTubers. So that leads to my point of just like, in the end of the day, customers, consumers don't care about what is going on in the background of things, what's going on behind the curtains. They don't care about who's calling the shots all the way backstage. What they care about is the content you're putting forth towards them. Because again, like I said in the last one, I have to protect my coins. And if I feel like I'm wasting $65 on this game because it's not giving me what I want, then why am I buying it?
Yeah.
Now, this whole
Yeah.
thing sounds this whole thing is all mute because fucking Sword and Shield made $24 billion.
And that's my point. Like, we can discuss this till the heat
Right?
death of the universe, but these games just sell.
They sell. Like, that's why I was like, when Gunner started talking, I was like, yeah, my point aligns more with Gunner because in the end of the day, it's like it's kind of falling on deaf ears. Because it's like, well, I can say, well, Game Freak is lazy, Game Freak is greedy, Game Freak is this, Game Freak is that, but in the end of the day, Game Freak is gonna pull out and say, well, we just banked 24 billion. Like, so it's like, and like
Yeah.
hold my beer. Like, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's crazy. And
Yeah.
these are things I noticed certain little things that people are allowing Game Freak to get away with, including myself, because I did buy Legends of Arceus, so I'm not gonna be a hypocrite. I am gonna say I do purchase Pokemon video game merchandise. I do love Pokemon as a franchise, and I will always forever live that Pokemon is life because Pokemon is one of the major reasons as to why I play my RPGs the way I do. Pokemon is one of the major reasons why I'm passionate about grinding in my video games, about getting down to every little detail in my video games. Like, I'll break a video game because of my experience with red, blue, yellow, gold, and silver, and crystal. Though all the Pokemon franchise built my whole momentum of how I deal with RPGs in general. So for me, Pokemon is life in that sense. But at the same time, I definitely agree with Blanca where I'm getting wiser now. And the wiser I get as the more I'm starting to realize that this is a waste of money. This is a waste of my money. Right?
Yeah.
So would I buy the next Pokemon game? I'd probably be a fucking sucker and still do it. But I probably won't do it day one. I probably won't do it month one. I probably won't do it year one. I probably will wait and stay till the game fully comes out because, like Gunnar said, the Game Freak discovered DLC. So
Yep.
now they can take their sweet time. So I'll probably do it like a year later or something like that and see where the DLC goes. I'm going to start treating it like I treat my gacha games. I'm going to delete you and I'll come back to you a year later. What kind of content do you have? Oh, no content, delete again. What kind like that's how I'm gonna start treating them now because in the end of the day, they're not trying to. I won't say they're not listening, but I also feel like they're too reliant on cutting corners to develop these games. There are no voiceovers for characters. I am so sick of hearing Pokemon screech or create these weird, awkward sounds, and you call that their cry. We're in fucking 2022. You can't simply imitate. You can't just simply imitate a few sounds from what you think they should sound like. You
I
can't
mean
do
they
that.
I mean they do it in anime, so I mean they can do that.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is like they can do voiceovers at this point. So why aren't they
Yeah.
doing voiceovers?
Hell,
Because money.
Zelda started to. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's all about money.
You know,
this is what I'll
that's
say to that because you said something interesting a little while ago, and I want to correct it. So you implied that I had an issue with them making the money that they're making, and that isn't accurate. I don't have issue with the company making. I want them to make money. Um, The problem is the product that they're giving me in exchange for the success that they have. They're their numbers are unlike anything else. It's like if you go to a restaurant, you like the food, but the service is bad. It's like I like the food, but I feel like
But
shit.
shitty
But
service.
I'm not. I don't feel like I'm getting treated well here. I don't feel welcomed here, and so that's why I don't. And this is just me. Like I'm not telling people to stop playing. Like if you play whatever the fuck you want to play, it's your life, it's your money, it's your time. I don't care. That has nothing to do with me. I'm saying me personally, I don't feel right playing those games anymore. I just don't. I haven't touched Arceus since I did the research 2 weeks ago. I haven't played it. You check the Switch. I haven't been online because I don't play the fucking game anymore. I don't want to. I'm disgusted. I can't look at it right now. That's just me though, right? And I wanted to say this before we, close out because we're about that. We've pretty much hit our point. It could be worse because if Game Freak and the Pokemon Company were North American companies, Pokemon would have been a gacha game right now, and they would have had microtransactions, and they don't yet. So everything that we're complaining about or talking about and how much money they're making, they can make twice as much money if they really wanted to. If they really wanted to, they can really fuck us and fuck us good. And they haven't for some reason. There's a few reasons, and I think one main reason is because it's a Japanese-run company, and they have some honor in their business practices. Some, definitely more than North American companies do. So it could be worse. It could absolutely be worse. So listen, if you like Pokemon, cool. Buy the game, enjoy it. Sometimes like learning this information is like madman's knowledge in Bloodborne. Like now that I know it, I can't unknow it, and it bothers me. And now I can't enjoy the game anymore. The same way that I used to be able to enjoy it because I was ignorant to like some of the realities of what was going on. It's like if you go to a restaurant and you go to the back for some reason you see the guy not wearing gloves or you see something unsanitary.
Yeah.
It just ruins, like, the food could be great.
Yeah.
Right, and that could just be a one-off, but it's in your head. Like you can't unsee it.
It's gonna be
You
there
can't
forever.
think about it.
It's
You can't not think about it, rather.
Yeah, it's gonna be
So
there forever.
yeah, man, that's it. Like that's the only thing I want to say. It could absolutely be worse because I think it's important to understand where you are in the situation, where it could be for better and for worse. Pokemon could certainly be like Genshin Impact, where you have to fucking use your credit card in order to get your favorite Pokemon. Like that could be a thing, right? And that's scary.
It seems like now they're kind of sort of emulating sports games where they're coming out every year, and
well, that's been the case since the beginning. They've been doing that since the beginning.
Right. Them coming out every year is not even necessarily my issue either. It's just more so of your. My major issue is that they're just simply cutting corners to give us lackluster content, zero to lackluster content, and yet it's like they're constantly being rewarded for bad behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I would say it's an issue for me simply because of their, quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes right now, lack of resources. And I'm not speaking on money, I'm speaking more so on personnel. Like, you have all this money, you can have a big team funded and create glorious games, but they refuse to do that. I don't know if the director holds that much power in terms of
well,
that,
it
but
was he works directly. He is Game Freak, and it came out of his mouth. So that's why and what I wanted to get to was I think there's a lot more than just the suits to blame on where Pokemon is going or has become.
Where to blame?
And huh?
Where to blame? The
yeah,
community.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
there's a lot more. It goes down from the consumers, yes, to the game developers. I do hold them accountable as well, and I hold who they answer to in terms of their investors and
Sure.
the suits and all that stuff as
Mhm.
well. So the whole thing is taking one franchise that is probably it's perfect. Pokemon is perfect because they could fuck it up
I wouldn't say
and
that.
still make their money. No, I don't mean perfect as in like everything they got right. I mean it's the perfect franchise or it's a gold mine because no matter how you fuck it up,
It's a
you still
golden
make the
egg.
money.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
that's
Yeah.
what I mean.
Okay.
So I don't think that the game developers should get a pass either. And the consumers like myself should also not get a pass because you can't complain about it and then go ahead and buy it. You understand what I'm saying? So like this whole podcast was me being one big hypocrite because I do buy Pokemon games and I won't lie about that. But at the same time, I'm also understanding as I'm getting more into this, like what Blanca said earlier, as you get more into this, you start to understand like you've been like you're getting beat in the head.
Yeah.
And it's time for you to make that change for yourself. Will it affect them? Probably will, probably not. But
Nope.
but at the end,
Not many people have our mindset if we were to
right,
like take that route. So
right. And
yeah.
complaining is easier than praising. And so I'll throw in this little praise. Legends of Arceus for what it was or what it is, to me is not a Switch, it's not a bad game. I still think if you own a Switch and you
It's an
can
incomplete game.
tolerate the Pokemon, right? You can tolerate the Pokemon franchise, it's a game worth buying. However, at the
I wouldn't
same
say that.
time, damn. However, at the same time, I just feel like this company or the consumers, something has to happen where the company realizes that these changes that are necessary for this game to continue to progress has to be done at some point. At some point, unless
Okay.
they're okay,
It ain't gonna
unless they're
happen in our lifetime, buddy.
Not with the
well,
amount of money they're making. Nope.
no,
It's they're basically saying how can if from a business mindset, I would say how can we continuously do the same thing with the same amount of resources and make more? Like
but
that's the problem with these companies. It's all about less is more. That's all they care about. It's really unfortunate, but for those who for us who appreciate the franchise, we're either gonna have to call to a stop or continue eating the shit sandwich. Like I don't see them doing anything more than what they're doing now. Um, I feel like for them to keep the business structure that they have, one way that they could remedy this is start the games over. So start a red and blue on the Nintendo Switch.
They
Only
did that
have the
already.
100. No, but here's what I'm saying, right? Because that was ridiculous. That was just a piece of shit game. What I'm saying is
Okay.
start with
Look at my
start
bank
with red
account
and
and tell me that again. I'm Game Freak. Okay. No, I know
no,
where you're
no.
going
The
with this, but
point,
I'll let
yeah,
you finish your thought. My bad.
no. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make is start from red and blue, right? Start it back on the Switch. Work with only those assets, the 151 Pokemon. Reanimate them, remodel them. Do what needs to be done for that initial game, and then work your way through to the other versions of the game. You can reincorporate those older models because they're not going to be that old, and then bring them into the other stages of the game.
Okay, can I
That's
role
how I
play?
feel like
Can I
they
role
would.
play 1 second? Can I be an investor? And can I ask you a question, Mr. Developer?
Mhm.
That sounds
Okay.
like a great idea. How is that going to give us year over year growth? Can you explain that to me? How are we going to make more money next year with that idea?
Well, Pokemon in itself sells really well anyway. So whatever you give them,
I was gonna say
customers are going to take.
I don't like that idea. What does the next person have? Because I want to hear green. I want to hear what's going to give me the most profit
mm-hmm,
for the least
mm-hmm.
amount of effort. Can we
okay.
recycle? You said remake a lot. That sounds like a lot of work, and it sounds like it's gonna cost. It's gonna be a bigger budget. I don't like that.
But
It's also going to
but it's
take
not
more
going.
time, and they don't want time. They need their pennies now. They want their
You
pennies
said it's not
now.
going to take time.
I'm not saying that it's not going to take time. I'm saying, okay, if you look at the games,
Well, Mr. Esoteric, this has been a lovely meeting. It sounds like you haven't really fleshed out your ideas yet. We're not going to invest in your idea. That's how that shit goes down. Straight up. I
They
hate
want
to
the
be
money
that guy.
now.
I hate to be that guy. But I've been in that same seat that you're sitting in. I've been there in companies that I've worked in, and I've tried to pitch ideas, and I get shot the fuck down because it's a novel idea. We like where your head is at, but we really rather just kind of focus on the bottom line. How can you guarantee me profits? I don't care about innovation, what the community wants. I don't care, dude.
no, I completely
Profits.
get that. I completely get
And
that.
what
I've
you're
been in
saying, what you're
situations like that
recommending,
as well.
doesn't equate to the profits. It just
Because
doesn't.
Esoteric is thinking like a game developer. He isn't thinking like an investor, or
But
he
what,
isn't thinking like your the mindset. It's different. So what
but
you have is you have good intentions for your fans. You have good intentions
Which
for
is
your
honorable, by the way. I
consumers.
mean,
With
I
right,
respect that.
it is honorable, but in the end of the day, it's like, those investors, they don't get the fan backlash, right? So they get the pretty penny, but they don't feel the repercussion of it. Whereas, like, say, well, really, it's people blasting other people on Twitter, because the Pokemon community fights itself for those
Ah,
that defend Pokemon and versus those that aren't defending Pokemon, and they're both a part of the same community. So it's not even really Game Freak that's getting much of the backlash. We're backlashing each other. We're arguing with each other, because there are some that feels like they are justified for using the same attack animation for 7 years, for I'm a, yeah, 7 years, no, 9 years, the same fucking attack animation for 9 years. And then there are others that's like, well, you're a insert insult here, and then that's when the feud starts, right? So it's not even like Game Freak is really, again, the biggest issue with video game companies is that the survey is done by the money. That's the survey. That's the, well, here's the proof that this shit works.
no, I completely get that. Now, you guys are misinterpreting what I'm saying. I'm not speaking on the premise of delegating with investors. I'm speaking from the premise of, with the tools that they have now, what they can do to sort of remedy and pacify the consumers today.
I
Like,
get
I'm
what
not
you're
saying
saying.
that
I
I'm not
100% understand.
yeah. So I understand that by no way, like by no means will the investors say, "Oh, that's a great idea. We're going to sell it." Because we all know I've been stressing this quote throughout the entire podcast, saying that less is more. We want less work for more money. Like, I completely understand that. But what I
Okay.
am saying is, I'm pretty much kind of what I'm trying to state is that I'm remedying what they can do with the 167 employees that they have and work on these games in increments. I mean, it'll never happen, but that is something that they can do to kind of
Sure.
pacify
Hmm.
the consumers.
Yeah, sure.
That's all.
Yeah.
Or he could just hire 167 more people.
That's them losing money.
Both of your ideas are losing money. Period.
Yeah,
I
it is,
hate to
because
say it. Both
you gotta
ideas
pay out
are
those
great, but both are gonna
you gotta
cost the money.
right, you gotta
It's not
pay
even
out
that.
those people.
Both of your ideas could make them more money, but it's unlikely. It's not like It's like, okay, well, can we just make a new game, right? And will the new game make us more money? Probably, right? History says it will. So why would we? They're only gonna pivot if they feel like they need to pivot, right? If you look at um the sales stats, like from one game to the next, right? Sun and Moon sold 16 million units. Cool. Ultra Sun and Moon sold half of that at 8.89 million, right? That's a big dip. And Esoteric mentioned it before. The third iteration of games always sells less. Like, it almost dips half almost every single time. Crystal sold 6 million copies, 6.3 million copies, 6.39 million copies compared to Gold and Silver's 23 million. That's a humongous dip, right? What did they do after Ultra Sun and Moon? They pivoted. What did they do? They re-released fucking Red and Blue in the form of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, and they made 14.33, or they sold 14 million copies. They pivot when they need to pivot. They don't pivot when fans are upset. They don't care. It's all about the numbers. And it's sad, and I hate to say that, but it is what it is. BDSP 14 million, like, and that game is ass. 14 million already, and it's gonna continue to sell. Pokemon Arceus first week 6.5 million, and that game is not. It's fun. It's fun. I had fun with it. I put 120 hours into the game. I didn't even finish it, and I have no intentions of finishing it. 6.5 million in the first week. It's second for it's on its way to being second fastest selling Switch game behind Animal Crossing. It's unfathomable how this game makes this much money and how people are so blind to it, and I was a part of that. I was blind to it for a long fucking time, and a lot of it's choice. I chose to be blind to it, but it just, I can't unsee it now. So here it is. Now I'm in this room. I can't escape. This is crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, go ahead, guys. I'm sorry. I keep kind of popping in and going on little rants.
That's what I'm saying is that Pokemon. That's why I say that Pokemon is it's, how can I put it? It's what did I say last time that it was? It was, oh God. Okay, it's not coming to me, but we all know that a part of the reasons why the game sells is for other things as well. There's the toys, there's the anime, so all of that works into play. All of that. The popularity, all of it. Like, come on, there's a giant freaking airplane flying through the sky with Pikachu's face on it in Japan. So that alone, you wake up in the morning and you see that flying in the sky, you're like, oh shoot, Pokemon exists. Like you don't get that with other video games that are blockbuster video games, or that
it's in a league of its own. I mean, it really is. It's in a league of its own.
So that's what I'm saying. It's like it's so much variables as to why the video game portion alone is selling, and you'd
which
be
is
surprised
only
that
a quarter of their earnings. That's crazy.
Right.
A quarter.
And a quarter of their earnings is it's all because it's tunneling through everything else.
Yeah,
you understand? Like
it feeds itself. Very self-sustaining.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There you go. It's a self-sustaining franchise because there's different things. Like you can't just walk into. First off, there is no store dedicated to the Call of Duty franchise. There is no store dedicated to that. There is a whole store dedicated to Pokemon. There was a theme park dedicated to Pokemon that shut down. That's no longer exists. Like there's people who don't even understand the franchise of Pokemon, but still claim they are fans of Pokemon. All of that is a variable, is a mathematical equation that goes into why the game alone is so friggin' successful. And that we spent almost an hour and a half on just the game alone. We never even really talked about, like the teddy bears and the t-shirts and the toys and the candy. Pokemon candy. They have rare candy as a candy. Like, we didn't even touch that. You understand what I'm saying? Was it Zeta bought what, a Pokeball? He bought a Pokeball the other day, right? He bought a Pokeball, right?
Yes.
He can't throw the shit.
He bought a great
He can't
ball.
throw the shit. He bought a great ball. He can't throw the shit. He can't catch the raccoon that's sitting outside, or the alligator that be walking in his yard. He can't catch that shit, right? But he bought
sure
a great
as hell
ball,
spent $100 on that shit.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which
$100?
Yeah, that's how much those things go for, the replica Pokeballs. Yeah.
The fuck? Nah, I'm good.
Well, you know what? He caught a good deal because in the Pokemon game, it's 500 Poke dollars.
We don't know the exchange rate. We don't know the exchange rate. But like, you see the figures behind, like, okay, so for those who are listening to the podcast, you won't be able to see. But behind me, I've rearranged some of my Pokemon figures. Some of those, all of those, what am I saying? All of those Pokemon figures are fucking bootleg Chinese versions because
illegal.
Those were like $20 each or $25 each, which is like, okay, that's okay. The real versions are like $150 or up. or higher.
I mean, let's be real. They're all made in the same place anyway, so you have a real
Yeah,
version.
but
But the difference,
but they're
the
not
difference is
licensed.
right.
They
They're
got
not
that
licensed.
stamp.
Right. Where it's where the
Ooh.
money is going. It's where the money is going. But that's my point is that it those other video games that they outsold that were blockbusters, like even Witcher, Blanca said Witcher won Game of the Year for 1 year. It
Hmm.
won Game of the Year. Maybe it did deserve to win Game of the Year. And maybe it selling as much as it did sell was a legitimate amount to sell for just being a video game. But Pokemon didn't beat it because of the video game.
Clearly,
Pokemon beat it, right? Pokemon beat it because it's
it's a
Pokemon,
cultural phenomenon. It's in a different
right?
stratosphere. Yeah, I
Listen,
totally agree.
Pokemon essentially is that elephant in the room. Like, you know the shit that it's doing, but you're not willing to acknowledge it. That's pretty much what it is.
Well, that's
You know.
some fans. There's some fans. There are other fans like myself that will slap you on your hands for doing something wrong, and
But
I
we're still gonna
do.
buy it.
Right, but we're still buying it, right? But like I said again, this Art Legends of Arceus was that tip of water that just overflowed the water in the cup. So it's just like that was it. You understand what I'm saying? Like BDSP had some recent changes to it that I also disagree with. So I'm not even. I told my brother like, listen, man, you're probably flying solo with that game now. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like, it's getting to the point where at least for me, it's just like I'd rather do other things. Like I'd rather.
Yeah,
I haven't loaded up Legends of Arceus myself. I don't think I think the last time I loaded it was maybe a week ago, not as long as Blanca. But when I did loaded it, I dropped into a field of Pokemon and I was like, why am I here? And then I turned it off and I just said, you know what? The next big game I'm going to play, I'm going to wait for King of Fighters. And that's what I've been playing since. So I don't say I'm done, but I'm smarter now. And they fooled me way too many times. So the next Pokemon game, if I do buy it, it will be shame on me. But I know for sure that I have to give them time. I have to give them time because, like Gunnar said, they discovered DLC, and that's what they're gonna use now. That is their new.
That
That's
wouldn't
their new
surprise
shit,
me.
right? That's their new shit. So I'll wait. I'll wait. I'll wait. I'll even wait for the DLC to become cheap. Then that's when I'll play it. And by that time, I'll be 40 something years old. I wouldn't fucking care anymore. I'll be over it.
I don't. My last point is I think Kong said it at the beginning of this whole thing that
fuck
Pokemon
Pokemon.
retains its. Well, I don't want to get docked. So he said that Pokemon games hold their value. To me, just like Zelda, just like Mario, even though I'm a huge Zelda fan, that's artificial because those games never go on sale. Because I bet you could tell which were in the grand scheme of things, the least performing Pokemon games based on what games go on sale. But Pokemon games don't go on sale. So like you said, Wolf, you'll wait, you'll wait, you'll wait. You can wait. You're still gonna have to pay 65 or 70 or
Oh no,
whatever.
no, I know that. I know I'm prepared to spend the full price or probably more by the time I'm ready to play the game. Is the content that I'm looking for, Gunner. That's
Mm,
all I really want. All I'm asking for is the content that you gave me when Emerald came out. When Emerald came out, Blanca Khan was sitting right next to me. When I should be doing schoolwork, I'm in the fucking battle frontier, screaming at the game on why Charizard chose to sleep and not do fly or slash or fire attack. Like the end game content or just the content in the video game itself is why I was willing to buy Pokemon. The whether it was the competitive content, and I feel like Pokemon games should have end game content for both non-competitors and competitors. I feel like they should implement that um, because you have two types of fans. You have fans that play the game for the story and that's it. You have fans that play the game just to catch all the Pokemon and that's it. But then you have those who's willing to grind out to create the perfect Pokemon to go ahead and battle each other with. You have so many. They can hit this franchise in so many different directions that they realize, and I know they know. I know they know that they can copy, paste, edit, and it's not going to change. So that's
Mhm.
why my advice to you during our Arceus podcast, my advice to you is just you have your issues with it, and those are heavy issues. Stay away from the franchise because I don't see that changing anytime soon.
No,
It's not
it's
going to
not.
change, and it doesn't have to change because I'm pulling up my stats again, and I'm thinking about these because I've played all these games, right, or most of them. Pokemon Crystal, I mentioned it before, sold only 6 million units. But if you compare Pokemon Gold and Silver to Pokemon Crystal, there was a big jump in what the game offered as far as like aesthetics.
I
Pokemon Crystal
agree.
was the first Pokemon game where they actually animated in the stat screen. So when you open up your menu and you open up Pokemon, right, and you look at your Pokemon stats, right, they do a little animation. That was the first time that ever happened, right? The colors were much more lush. The sprites were clearer and higher quality. The game looked great, comparatively to Gold and Silver. Yet it sold less than a quarter, right? Like, or about a quarter of the sales. That's crazy. Like, the the developers and like the people in charge are looking at that shit and like, okay, well, how much money did we spend to do this, right? You brought up Emerald. Emerald, I think, to me, if I had to like rank all the Pokemon games in terms of like quality of content and gameplay, Emerald and Black and White 2 are like up there. It's like
Yeah, I
all
agree.
time great games, right? Emerald only sold 7 million units. And I say only,
Mm-hmm.
like 7 million's bad. But for a Pokemon game, it's low, right?
Yeah.
7 million compared to Ruby Sapphire's 16 mil, right? Emerald, people are still asking for Battle Tower content. And it's just, they added it. What did it do for them? Not much, right?
Mm-mm.
Black and White 2 had the world battle. The world battle, whatever. You fought like old gym leaders and
Mm-hmm.
they had the giant tree or whatever where you caught like rare
Mm-hmm.
Pokemon, and they had a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of endgame shit, like a ton of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Black and White 2, 8.52 million compared to Black and White's initial 15.64 million. Like, people say they want like, and I'm one of them. I want a better game. I want quality, changes. I want this and that. I want like meaty content, right? They give us meaty content and it doesn't. It sells. The sales go down 50%. Like, they have to put a new title on there for people to like, for them to garner those numbers. We're not gonna get a Pokemon Gun for Pokemon Sword and Shield because it's not going to do well, and they know that. So they're like, no, we're not doing that. We're just gonna release a DLC. We're gonna, because that's less work, right? They don't have to make a new, like, they'll make new areas, but like it's not the same, right? Making a full game versus a DLC expansion, like the
Right.
workload is
Right.
obviously less, right?
Different. Yeah.
In the next generation 9 Pokemon, it's just gonna be a new thing. Like, it's gonna be whatever the fuck, metal and steel, whatever they decide to name that shit, and then they're gonna rake in another, they're gonna sell another 20 million units because they might implement one or two features from fucking Arceus, right? They're just gonna
Mm-hmm.
drag and drop a few fucking lines of
Mm-hmm.
code and then be like, all right, cool, there you go, and they're gonna show us a bullshit trailer, and people are gonna eat that shit up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, it is what it is, and no other game can do this. People are
No.
complaining to Rockstar like, "Oh, make a new Grand Theft Auto." The motherfuckers ain't making nothing. They're like, "You see how much money we're making? Just giving you fucking reskinned cars every few weeks, every month."
It's not even about the game, the base game anymore. It's all about the
It's about
online
the
aspect.
online. Yeah, and they're raking it in with microtransactions. Pokemon is gonna go that. They're gonna go that direction at some point. There's gonna be microtransactions. It's headed there. I'm telling you. I'm calling it now. You
Honestly,
want
mean,
this
I
shiny
wouldn't be
Pokemon? You
surprised.
want a shiny charm? You want this rare Pokeball? You want this
didn't they kind of do that already
whatever the
with the
fuck?
pre-order bonuses for like you get those exclusive balls to catch in the
Yeah.
game?
And people were
Yeah.
dude, people were reselling the codes on
Mm-hmm.
like on eBay and stuff, and people were buying them. People were using them as like not even trade bait, but like sell bait, like, hey, give me $5, I'll give you a Pokeball, like the friend ball or whatever, and people were fucking doing it, and it's like,
Imagine if they added that in a DLC menu, $10
what
for
is
20
wrong
balls.
with you? People will fucking buy
Mm-hmm.
it's been
Yeah,
proven with Pokemon Go already that
I like
microtransactions can work.
I don't think that they realize that yet, because again,
Yeah.
that's the community working. That's the community within itself, right? Like those Pokeballs being sold, the codes are being sold. That's a community within itself. I don't think they've picked up on that yet. I think the only thing they picked up on is the fact that people are cloning Pokemon and creating shiny Pokemon.
Yeah, I read the patch
Um,
notes. That made me chuckle. I got a good chuckle out of that.
yeah, and I'm okay with, stopping cloning Pokemon from trading, but I don't agree with cloning Pokemon not being used for battle, especially if you're not going to a world tournament or regional, then that's one thing. But if you are online and you have clone Pokemon, you should be able to use your clone Pokemon for battle. It's really not going to change the lack of battle content anyways. So why even do all of that? You didn't But again, the issue is now the community within itself, right? So now people is like, oh well, I want 10 of your other shiny Pokemon for one of my shiny Pokemon in the heavy ball. Okay, great. Guess what? Those 50 ones that you cloned are now useless to you. So now you're going online and you're like, hey, give me anything you want for this shiny Pokemon in the heavy ball. Really? Like, why would anybody take it from you? What are they going to do with it? It's useless content now. It's useless content in a video game that lacks content. It's like
Yeah.
it's asinine. It's so crazy. It's ridiculous. But um I just feel like in the end of it all, I don't know if Game Freak is necessarily lazy based on the definition that Kong had said in the beginning. Um, which is what I like, the fact that he looked up the definition of lazy. I went with the definition of lazy as I understood lazy. But when you look at it in that way, I won't I can't say that they're necessarily lazy. But when you find out that a company cuts corners to meet or to create a video game, and then they go and they put out in interviews like they're doing such hard work, you start to wonder, is it more dishonest, or is it that they're lazy, or is it that they're greedy? You don't even know where to go with them because you have so much negativity to
It's a
that's
little bit of
building.
everything, if you want to be honest.
Yeah, like you don't even know where to properly place them at this point.
Yeah,
So
I think
it's
greedy
a
and dishonest are like the most accurate descriptions of
uh-huh.
their business
Mm-hmm.
model. It's and manipulative. It's certainly manipulative, 100%.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but anyway, this has been a long conversation, but an informative one and a fun one for me at least.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So for those listening, hope if you made it this far, wow, kudos to you. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed the combo. Dislike if you didn't. Comment down below. Let us know what you think about Game Freak and whether they're lazy or greedy or what. What are your thoughts? Will you be buying the next Pokemon game? Are you gonna stay a Pokemon simp, or are you gonna open your eyes, open your third eye?
Wake up, sheeple.
It's up to you. The choice is yours. Whether you take the red rare candy or the blue rare candy is totally your call. We post a podcast episode every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so subscribe to be notified on that. Every Monday, we have a 2-minute review on various video games that we stream. We stream on Twitch. I personally stream under Blanka Kong. I stream mostly retro games and indie games and a few AAA games, but mostly retro and indie. Mr. Esoteric, who has stepped away for a second, he streams on Twitch as well under Logical Gamers TV every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. He mostly plays AAA single player games. So he plays Sekiro, Dark Souls, Returnal, Horizon Zero Dawn, like all the new hot shit. He plays that stuff. So definitely check him out there and subscribe, or not. Well, you don't have to subscribe. You could follow at the very least on Twitch. We also have some social media accounts under Logical Gamers TV. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We have a Discord as well. Follow us on whichever platform that you use the most. I think that's it. So, guys, thank you so much for a great conversation. We'll catch you in the next one. Until next time.